Hello, Western Civ 104. I want to welcome you to week 2. Everyone that has watched my announcements and read the letter that I sent out to all of you, lo and behold, you are doing fine because you are following my instructions. So rest assured, my announcement will not be as long as the first one. Because I don't need to cover so many things. I wanted to get you all on board. Initially, should I say, I set up to have video notes due on Thursday this week. I noticed that I have a few more videos added this week, and I extended the deadline to Sunday. So I want to remind you always that to look on the weekly work objectives. Work will be on Thursdays and or Sundays. So this week we have the discussion is due Thursday night, and then the video notes and the paper is due on Sunday. Most likely starting next week you will have the video notes due on Thursdays. On Thursdays. So that'll just change from time to time. Keep an eye out on that, okay? And so that's all I mainly wanted to say in terms of keeping that in mind about the work. So on the links for the discussion, when we do ancient warfare, you might have to fish around a little bit for the one on the ancient Assyrian text, but you'll find a PDF file that'll pop up and you can read that text if you don't have the textbook to utilize for that discussion. And you should have no problem linking up to the biblical scriptures that we're going to cover from ancient Israel to cover in the discussion as well. And I just want to say a quick few things about the topics on ancient Israel that we're covering this week, and then I'll be it. So, by the way, for those of you who had me in World Civ 106, these first several weeks will have information that we covered in 106 in a slightly different way, and then we're going to move on to totally different information. But I do a very thorough discussion of ancient Israel and Israelite religion in my 106 class, and then we covered Judaism, which actually develops much later on, and they are related, but there is a slight difference which I cover. Needless to say, if you are born into a Christian household, then ancient Israel is a highly, highly important, significant topic to you. If you are born Muslim, the topic of Israel is also important. For many of you Christians, you may not realize that the Quran, the Islamic text, claims to come from the same religion. So there's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Job, Noah, and Jesus, and Mary, and John the Baptist in the Quran. They have some slightly different names in Arabic, but they're there. Now, that's just a quick side point. For those of you who are born into a Jewish household, you're often getting, if you have any traditional Jewish education, you will learn some of the stories, of course, about where the Pesach meal comes from, or the Passover, Israel leaving bondage in Egypt and going to the Promised Land, and certain stories like that. But you will probably mainly be learning things that come out of the Talmud or the Midrash or some other teachings. Now, having said that, the point that I want to make is that this section is not only highly relevant to the development of Western civilization on a secular level. Probably a good chunk of my students in this class will find this directly related to some aspect of their personal life in terms of their belief systems, okay? And the way that it's approached in this class may not reflect the way that you would approach this in your personal life. So let me give you an example. My family is very religious. On both sides, I've had clergy in the Catholic religion and in Protestant religion on my mother's side. And ancient Israel and the stories in the Bible are taught as literal history, and everything has a literal important meaning that applies to even current times. Okay? And so that's how a lot of you are looking at this. what many of you who grow up religious might be surprised about is that you have many rabbis and many clergy members who don't believe that the Old Testament stories of ancient Israel are literal history, but they believe that they contain spiritual truths. By the way, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just trying to explain to you that there's different ways that this has been looked at. So in other words, you have some rabbis and some Christian priests and ministers, whatever title they go by, that don't have a problem reconstructing or critiquing the history that's written in the Old Testament of the Bible, and they still feel that there is some sort of spiritual message that that's coming from God. From some traditions, this is just completely offensive and ridiculous, and like, how could you do that kind of thing? Okay, and that might be the way that some of you feel. My whole point is that you're taking this class to learn about what the consensus is by secular historians. And I end our videos with a lecture by Israel Finkelstein, who is an Israeli archaeologist, and he critiques the literal history of the Bible from our archaeological point of view as a Jewish Israeli living in that part of the world. So, and actually, I would actually argue, if you actually follow this, that the majority of Israel's archaeological department is dominated by archaeologists and the biblical archaeological departments that do not take the Bible literally as literal history, although based somewhat, okay? So that's all I want to say about that. I just want you to be aware. I think it's important, and I think you should find it very interesting. I've had many, of my students who are strong believers still thank me for this section, and they really feel they're more aware of the way to look at all of it. Now, in terms of those of you who are maybe coming from the Middle East, and we're talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict, that is another complicated topic that I'm not going to address so much here. Just to say that Palestine, that what is now Israel is a different historical topic than what we're talking about now with ancient Israel. So modern Israel was created in 1948, and it was created after a war between Arab nations and Jews coming from Europe that were coming back to reclaim the Holy Land. They claimed that they were returning, and ended up having 500,000 Palestinians expelled from their homes. And it's a very controversial war within the broader Middle East and even in the broader Islamic world. That is my expertise. I can talk about that a lot with you. I go over that very thoroughly in my 107 class. I will not give you as much to talk about it here. Needless to say, what I want to just try to draw attention to you is that when we're discussing ancient Israel, there's over 1,000 years, quite a bit of time, between the destruction of ancient Israel and what's happening now in that area geographically. And that gap of time and the disconnect between ancient Israel and modern Israel is shocking and a little bit perplexing to a lot of students who are just coming into it. So if you're curious about that and you want any scholarly books on that topic, I'll send them your way. But for this class, what we're really trying to focus on is ancient Israel's influence on Western civilization. And again, it is tremendous. And the more you know about it, the more you are going to have an idea of roots of also the way we look at justice and concepts of ethics and morality and politics. Next to, and it ends up getting mixed with Greco-Roman history, which we're going to cover a lot later as well. Okay, so that's all I have to say about this. I hope that you are having a good week, and I do work 2 jobs. I'm a little burned out myself. I'm trying to cut back my hours, so forgive me if I don't get back to you soon enough. I'm going to always try to make myself more available. I work for the next 2 days at my other job, and I'll be working from home also on Wednesday. So just let me know if you have any questions and need anything. All right, we'll be in touch.